Welcome back. The time is 28 minutes to 8 on the Super Morning Show. At 8 o'clock, we'll go for the Joy Business Report. But now we're having a conversation around culture in a challenged economy, and it forms part of our Patriotism Month conversations. I introduced my guest to you, Dr. Obadele Kambon from the Institute of African Studies, and Nana Oforiwa Kranting, development economist, founder, Rural Chapels Ministry. So let me start it off with you, Doctor. Now, in a cultural setting, in a patriotic setting, we have shared beliefs, we have shared values, and we have shared norms. Is there any relationship between economic outcomes and patriotism or culture?
This is a very good and very appropriate question, especially for Patriotism Month. I would like to actually frame the discussion in the context of a few quotes. The first from Amilcar Cabral, the first president of Guinea-Bissau. And in the quote, he says, the exercise of imperialist domination, like all other foreign domination, for its own security requires cultural oppression and the attempt at direct or indirect destruction of the essential elements of the culture of the dominated people. If imperialist domination has the vital need to practice cultural oppression, national liberation is necessarily an act of culture. So here we're seeing that for a people to be free in any way, shape, or form, it requires the expression of their culture. Also, Amos Wilson, a noted psychologist out of the U.S., he has a quote where he says, in order for the European to maintain his rulership of the world, even though he has 10% of the world's population, he must keep black people in a particular state of mind. It is necessary that you be backwards. You must avoid things that have some meaning to you and flock toward things that are destructive to your future, or else you wouldn't be oppressed, ladies and gentlemen. Oppression, and this is very important, oppression rests on people going places and enjoying pleasures that destroy them, and who are excited by nonsense and bored by stuff that they should be learning. I'll pause for that.
Okay.
That is the foundation upon which oppression rests. In this world where things are backwards, those who are oppressed must be made to feel freest when they are most enslaved. But if you don't understand the history, people say, how do we act like this? Why can't we get along? How can we do this? Why can't we do that? Every culture does what? Trains, teaches its people to be what it needs to continue its existence. You cannot turn your children over to other people or turn yourself to other people and expect to be the right people for yourself. You are out of your minds if you think so. Those people are going to educate you in their interests. And then finally, a quote from the oldest book in the history of mankind, the Instructions of Ptah-hotep, written some 4,500 years ago, and also written here in Africa, which is, one who obeys his belly or his appetite belongs to the enemy. So there are several key points that are being brought up in these. One is about created tastes and desires, that the role of culture is to create in you certain desires that should be to your own benefit. However, if that culture is determined from outside or from others, then your tastes and desires will be all of these things that are not in your interest. So if we look at an example like a traditional festival, let's say before the coming of Europeans, a traditional festival had so much political economy, there's so much benefits, tangible benefits for the people who participate. So we can say the palm wine tapper gets some benefit from here's the festival.
Okay.
Those who...
Because he undertakes an economic activity
Exactly.
that's related to the festival.
That's related to the festival, and therefore he gets a benefit from it. You can say that the blacksmith who makes the gong gong, those who are carving the drums, we can say that all of these people, they have some role to play. So it's not just culture for culture's sake. It's that we are actually getting some type of tangible benefit from the culture that we are engaging in. We can even go to the bark cloth, the chen chen that used to be worn, that this person is beating the cloth, or those who are weaving the cloth, that they get these benefits. But now if we look at that same type of festival in modern times, here you have schnapps. So the thing that is part of the culture that would have been enriching the indigenous palm wine tapper, we now say it has to be coming from Holland before it is something that we want. The elders say, oh, don't bring me this local one. It has to come from Holland. We can look at the trade beads that were coming from Italy. Basically,
and even some from China.
Even some from China.
Mostly from China, actually.
These days. At that point in time, a lot of the ones that were being used for trade for enslaved persons, like the chevron beads, a lot of those at that time were coming from Italy, where they said one chevron bead was equal to 7 human beings. So nowadays we can even see the influx of the cheaper ones from China. But the whole point is that in a traditional setting, the essential elements of culture is to enrich in very tangible ways and in intangible ways, psychologically, spiritually, otherwise, to enrich those indigenous people who are part of that culture. However, if that culture is perhaps subsumed by others, then the culture now becomes something where it is enriching everyone except for ourselves. So I just wanted to bring up that as something to frame our discussion: created tastes and desires as a role of culture, and then tangible benefits.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly,
Yes.
we have certain cultural activities that support our local or domestic economy.
Yes.
Now, from the picture you've painted and from the trends we see around us, is the emergence of not the emergence of foreign culture actually, but if you look at some of these cultural activities that support the domestic economy, are they growing or are they being watered down?
This is a good question. Again, if we can come to a central focus of culture, that essential elements of culture, we can look at culture not only in terms of, say, a traditional festival, but we can see if the essential element is to provide benefits for the indigenous people who are part of the culture. We can look at something like RLG, right? They make their own phones, they make their own laptops. We can look at Safo Kantanka. I homeschool my daughter. We went there as a field trip, and we're seeing all of the things that they're doing, televisions, that we can see those as expressions of a unique, modern Ghanaian culture in the sense of these are things just like before the coming of the Europeans to the festival. These are things that are being produced. They're even at Safo Kantanka, they are using steel in order to make their own engine blocks, and then they're driving the cars that they're making. They're carving, all of these things. So we can see to some extent those types of modern things as well being watered down because of the influx of foreign goods. And, we can talk about Samsung phones, iPhones, all of these things. And basically, again, this comes down to the point of created tastes and desires. If your taste and your desire is, for these things that lift me up in social status, and this has been the case for some time now, we can even go back hundreds of years, that if we're all alike, I have something that is rare, you see, and therefore this thing that I have is rare is something that you can't just go off into the bush and get. I got it from where? I got it from abroad. So because of these things, I have a phone that no one else has or that no one else can afford. If I go to my village, I can show these things off. I'm wearing clothes that no one else has, no one else can afford. So these are the things that we can see are watering down our culture, but it's not necessarily an external thing being put on us. There is something with the mind. There's a quote also from Amos Wilson, who we quoted earlier, who says the wealth of a people is not in their soil, but in their minds. And you can look at the British as an example of that. What do they have but coal and gas? However, look at the wealth that they amassed because of their mind to say that we will go and take the wealth of everyone else, and we consider that to be our right to do so. So, again, to come back to the essential elements, if our minds will change to the point where we say that it is something that elevates me to have something that is made in Ghana. There's a good documentary called The Great African Scandal, wherein it's an academic out of the UK, Beckford, and in it he talks about how the rice industry was collapsed. Now, when we talk about rice, generally people say, I like the white rice, the perfume rice, the American rice, blah, blah, blah.
All of the imported ones.
All of the imported ones. And except for the local ones. And this is the one that's actually healthy, the one that's not bleached. This is the one that has all of the nutrients. Even rice growing, like people will eat rice with fork and, they say it's from abroad. But rice growing, if we look at places like Senegal, even during the time of chattel enslavement, they were looking specifically for people from Senegal. When we say Jollof rice, this is a Jollof kingdom of Senegal. They were looking for people who had the expertise in doing these things, but we're looking at it now from different eyes. We say that this is something that is foreign. And basically, the rice industry was collapsed, and you can go back to the early 80s, the Rawlings chain period, times of famine, that we flood the market. And when I say, this is coming from U.S., these types of directives and imperatives, we'll flood the market with this white rice, this subsidized rice, to the point where it can collapse the industry. This is documented again in the Great African Scandal, and you can see a similar thing in a documentary called Life and Debt.
Okay, so clearly our desires are shifting in such a way that we're not helping our local economy.
Right.
But let's try and identify the reasons for the shift. Is it contact with the international world, or does it have anything to do with education?
It may have to do with education or lack thereof. Again, this will go to how we define education as education. There's a book called Too Much Schooling, Too Little Education, that these two are not necessarily the same thing. So if we are saying that we're educated, we may be thinking logically that we're doing things that enrich us, doing things that logically benefit us economically, psychologically, health-wise. However, in going to school, we sometimes get views that anything that is coming from abroad is therefore good. So this is a mindset that is not logical in terms of this is something that is destroying your own economy, but you continue to do it. These are things that are sending all of your jobs elsewhere, but yet we continue to do it. So I wouldn't say education if education, means anything good. We might say that the effect of schooling and, getting these ideas that we as African people are worthless. These are certain ideas that have been promulgated for, at least a few hundred years, that we are uncivilized, we come from the jungle, and therefore, for us to do anything good, it requires civilization, and civilization comes from where? Abroad, which of course we know is not the case. The first writing systems developed here, the first stone monuments, great architecture, all of these things were developed here in Africa, but it requires us to know those types of things in order for us to value those types of things. You can't value what you don't know.
16 minutes to 8 on the Super Morning Show. We're having a very hearty chat with Dr. Obadele Kambon. He's a research fellow at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. And we're exploring the subject of culture in a challenged economy. Culture in a challenged economy as part of our Patriotism Month conversation. And he's given us a very interesting perspective that there are certain cultural activities which support the local level economy. Now, once your desires shift, the benefits that the economy should get from culture, those benefits appear to vanish with time. Send us your text messages, 1422, which is our short code across all networks. We'll also be very happy to receive your WhatsApp messages, 0244 340 437. Nana, what do you think about this, if you will, thesis which we've received from Dr. Kambon? What do you think some of the things we are doing are, for which reason we are not supporting the local economy through our cultural practices?
You're right. We've just had a thesis. I mean, I'm just, you saw my mouth is open.
Very lightly.
Right. We have to accept that culture is not static. All right. So there's a basic element that will stay, but it's not static. It will always be influenced by extraneous interventions. So we have a culture that says a woman's place is in the kitchen. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Do they always stay there? Take the Ghanaian economy now. Is a woman's place in the kitchen? I mean, I'm sure lots of you young men now go home and quickly put something together.
Oh, yes, we do.
When the lady hasn't come. Okay. So maybe what we need to do is to look at how we have been influenced by the different things that have filtered into our economy or our cultural economy. And he's right. When we started life, before Adam was born in Ghana, we had palm wine, all right? The sad thing is that we have not been able to change palm wine into a state where it will be competitive on a market. All right, so you go to the average Ghanaian home or funeral in a village, and they're bringing you red wine instead of palm wine. We have not been able to improve on what we have. And rather, like he said, we see what is coming from outside as being better because of the packaging. Basically, that's it. It's packaged in such a way that you are forced to enjoy it. I mean, if you go to I've just come back from the field.
Okay.
For 3 days, and anybody who knows me will be really surprised. I've had to eat fufu 3 days continuously because I went to villages and the food available
was fufu.
Okay, it's either you eat it or you starve. So maybe what we have to be paying attention to is what can we do to improve on what we have. The issue of acquired taste has been forced on us. For a lot of you young people, you might not notice this, but when we were growing up, we were given hand-me-downs in the form of powdered milk, in the form of wheat from USAID. You know, you saw that handshake thing. So we started eating things that were given to us for free, and therefore we thought that if you had cocoa without milk, there was something wrong. All right, so you acquire this taste, and you are then forced to demand that. He's right. When you take brown rice, or when you take rice from Ghana, it's got all its protein content in there. When you take white rice, some of which comes here now, it's just chalk. Mm-hmm. That's what we're eating, and that's what we're feeding our children on. A child who feeds on chalk is not likely to be bright. It's as simple as that. But we have accepted it because all of the commercial houses are white rice, perfumed rice, Texas,
fortified,
all sorts of things. But they don't tell you that you're lacking protein in this. All right, you go to a village and you want food, say flaras, angwamu. Basically, that's what they're selling to you. So yes, we have culture. Culture is not static. But we need to take what is outside and positively change what we are doing to benefit us.
Okay. Doc, I just wanted to make a note of the points raised by Nana. She talks about the fact that culture is not static, and we should begin to think of ways by which we can reconcile the fact that we need to preserve certain elements of our culture, but also pay attention to the fact that there are foreign influences that will constantly eat away at our culture. I'll come to you for a comment on that, but let me come to Dr. Mwakoba now. Good morning, sir.
Morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Welcome to the Super Morning Show. I want to get your thoughts on whether culture matters to economic outcomes.
Of course it does, yes. But as my sister said, it's not static. Some of the things we are talking about, look, nobody will force you to buy anything. That is how life is. You have to be well informed to know what is good for you. It's based on individual taste. When I was in school, I liked Tom Brown. It's locally produced. But when we got Quaker Oats, we liked it better. Because it's not because a white man came and told me that I should eat it, but because I liked it. It tastes better. It tastes different. And so if we move towards Quaker Oats and now forget Tom Brown, well, it's not the fault of the person who is selling it, right? And which means that if we find that people like Quaker Oats better than Tom Brown, then maybe we should find a way of making something that looks like or tastes like Quaker Oats. This is pure economics. Nobody forces anyone to do anything. You go to the market, rice, yes. We have locally manufactured rice. How many Ghanaians eat it? Everybody wants sultana and all the other ones, perfumed rice. Why? Did anybody force us to do that? It's information. Taste is not forced on anyone. And so bit by bit, people are demanding that one, and that has taken over. The local rice, sometimes you eat it at your own peril because it's got gravel in it.
Okay.
And if you chew just once, that's it. I'm not eating that again.
I want us to broaden the scope beyond for example, the foodstuffs we're using, to look at the issue about taste broadly, more broadly than we're doing. Exactly.
The thinking, I think, is the biggest problem. Thinking. You see, their outlook, everything is thinking. And if you don't think, well, somebody else will take advantage of you. That's it. It's based on individualism. And so if you, as I said, if you snooze, you lose. And an example is this EPA that EU wants us to sign. Fine. It is. They see something good in there for themselves. What do we see in there for ourselves? And so it's your outlook. It's a sophisticated game. And so if you are not sophisticated enough, well, they take advantage of you.
Dr. Kambon, do you agree?
I definitely agree on the part of thinking, and then also this idea of, no one is forcing anything on you. There are different levels of power. One is force in terms of physical coercion. Then you have, coercion without, physical force. And then one of the most complex and developed levels is manipulation, wherein you think that you are making choices when you're actually reacting. In the act of reacting, you think that you're thinking, but you're actually just reacting to external stimuli. So
simplify it and break it down.
Let me break it down.
Examples,
I'll give you an example like Pavlov's dog. You have this psychological experiment where a bell can be rung and then the dog starts salivating because every time the bell is rung, he's given some food. So it comes to a certain point that all you have to do is ring the bell and the dog will start salivating. He's reacting. He's being manipulated to have what we would think is a response that would require, something like food, but he's just being manipulated in that sense. And again, if we can come back to our quote, we said, in this world where things are backwards, those who are oppressed must be made to feel freest when they are most enslaved. So here we say that, I just happen to want. It's like in the U.S., everyone in my age group wanted to get Nike Air Jordan sneakers. Mm-hmm. It didn't require physical force and it didn't require coercion. What it required was all of these things being put into your environment.
Advertising.
This is the point. This is the point that this is the highest level because you think that you just happen to want it. And you say, I'm an individual. I want these Jordans. However, every single person is saying they want the exact same thing. I want this starter jacket. I want this Nike jacket. So all of these things, and we think that we're thinking, but we're actually being manipulated to make these certain choices.
But at least in your case, that's a good thing. I mean, because these are symbols of what America represents. These are brands that are American. So you stimulate the American economy by patronizing them.
It's definitely in the interest of those who are creating the tastes and desires, but it may not necessarily be in the interest of those who are adopting them and who are thinking that they are making those choices of themselves. Now, to come to the point of culture not being static, this is the whole point that I'm making, that because we know that this is the case, we can actually decide the direction that our culture goes in. So it's not to say let's stay. Typically, the view is that going forward is going modern and becoming more European, and going backwards is returning to our own individual ethnic groups. And I think it's a very narrow view. As African people, once we actually understand what that means, we can not only look at what my specific ethnic group does or what Ghana specifically does, but we can look laterally. We can say, okay, what type of political government systems existed in the Congo in ancient times, and how may those essential principles be used to develop, our own thing here now. We can look at, what were the Zulus doing? So we can even look at the global African world and say, all right, what type of martial arts are being done in Brazil, in Cuba, and all of these places. So it requires us to, once we understand that we have a role in culture changing, that it's not static and it's not, let's just go back to my village or go forward to the UK, that we can start to make these choices and make informed choices, and also recognize what may be manipulating my choices. If I just say I want this, what went into making me want this? A very good example, there's a documentary called Good Hair by Chris Rock, where he talks about how all of these black women specifically want to perm their hair. Now, they all say that they just want to do it. But what caused them to want what they want? What in their childhood? Now, we can look at these commercials where they have these white women who are flinging their hair in the breeze, and they are saying, beautiful, beautiful. You have this sound bite attached to this. And then as the thing that sparked him to do the documentary, he said his children came in and they said, I want my hair to be straight. You know, like a princess, like whatever they're seeing on the cartoons and all of these things. So we don't realize that all of these things are starting from a time where maybe the child can't even talk, but they're having these images constantly thrown at them, to the point that now they turn 4 years, 5 years old, they say, I want this. Well, what made them want what they want? And we can see it also here in Ghana. This isn't only the U.S., that when we see all of the women who are perming their hair putting chemicals in that are said to be unsafe, that, you know, cause cancer, all of these things documented, that we just say that we want it, but what is the role in seeing, for example, a white Jesus with, you know, this type of hair? What is the role of us seeing all of these stars on TV with this type of hair, and then we say we just want what we want? So once we realize that we play a role and we can recognize external manipulation, then we can say, well, let's start making choices that may be to our own benefit, economically, psychologically, spiritually, health-wise, and in every other area. We can make those types of choices because culture is not static.
After the Joy Business Report, I'll come to Nana and then Doc, because I noticed they were writing down a few points while you were talking. And then usually when we talk about the element of culture and patriotism, you have people saying, well, the economy is challenged. I don't even have a job. How to get 3 square meals a day is a problem. I don't have electricity. I don't have this. I don't have that. So it's difficult for me to be patriotic. Can people still have the love for their country at heart, even in the midst of economic challenges? I want us to deal with that and also examine this point. Are there any policy things that we have done in the past which may have eroded the element of patriotism in our people, and what can be done to address those? But Francis has a number of your text messages before we hand over to Pakwesi Asare.
This one says, we are all sinking in a common boat. Let's get involved. To be patriotic means to love, respect, and duty towards your country. I believe this love, respect, and duty towards Ghana by Ghanaians is not based on the economic status of Ghana. It's a devoted love and support and defense of our country. The next one says, Doctor is right, but our festivals these days have become occasions for practicing immorality rather than focusing on our needs. It's also a harvest time for selfish leaders who concentrate on their personal gains rather than the needs of the local people, and then turn around to blame a particular government. That's by God's way. The other one says, Niyama in Abibifa Hudie, I hope I got that right. He says, I support your point. Culture is the greatest power the oppressors used to enslave our people. We need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. The last one here says, if we can take a critical look at the drink and it tastes exactly like palm wine, can't we also find a new way of preserving ours to put something into the pocket of these palm wine tappers? Please, let's make good choices from our dreams.
Right, he says vodka tastes very much like what? Akweteshi, and so we should advertise it.
It does.
Much like, you know, the others advertise what it is that they have. The time is 8 o'clock now. Pakwesi Asare is joining us with the Joy Business Report. It's sponsored by Cal Bank. You can bank on our service, myjoymarket.com. That's Ghana's most comprehensive online marketplace. It's also proudly sponsored by Lipton Tea, the #1 tea brand in the world.
We at Joy FM say thank you to our cherished listeners for your support every year. As we huddle with our own families during Easter, let's not forget the homeless and destitute sleeping on the streets. Join Joy FM donors and volunteers on 20th April 2014, Easter Sunday at Efwa Sutherland Children's Park from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. to feed, provide medical aid, counsel and entertain the less privileged in our society. Hebrews 13:16 says, do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. You can donate charitably towards this cause at the offices of Joy FM or call 0302-216-540 or 0244-663-968. And we will gladly pick up your donations. The 2014 Easter Soup Kitchen is powered by your superstation Joy 99.7 FM with support from our cherished listeners and clients.
Fly free with the British Airways 747 on the Super Morning Show. This summer, British Airways is bringing the bigger 747 to Ghana, now flying 10 times a week with both morning and evening departures. British Airways are offering you more seats and even better connections to London and over 150 worldwide destinations. To celebrate the arrival of the 747, we are giving you the chance to win free tickets on board British Airways Club World Business Class cabin and to experience the world-class facilities at Heathrow's Terminal 5. On Monday, 24th March 2014, get in touch on Facebook, call or text in the answers to the daily questions, and you could win this fantastic prize. It's the Fly Free promo from British Airways on the Super Morning Show. British Airways, to fly, to serve.
Good morning and welcome to the Joy Business Report. And coming up, economist Kwame Pianim criticizes government for its inability to inspire confidence in the Ghana cedi.
What sense does it make for me if I have 1,000 Ghana cedis to go and buy dollars and put it under my bed for a year? If I know that the cedi and the dollar, the cedi is going to depreciate by, say, 5% a year.
We'll hear more from the economists later in the bulletin. We'll also tell you about whether Ghana could start using the West African single currency by next year. Also coming up, National Investment Bank gets new managing director. And today on our special Friday feature, we throw the spotlight on the conditions of service for private security guards. My name is Parkwisi Asari. Well, apart from taking a decision on the Economic Partnership Agreement, the heads of state meeting in Ivory Coast is also expected to reach an agreement on the introduction of the West African ECO. After several postponements, the economic grouping will decide whether the region is now ready for the single currency after setting a 2015 deadline. Let's do some analysis on this issue with my colleague George Rafi. George, so what are the leaders going to reach? What are the leaders going to reach the agreement on? When are the leaders going to reach this agreement?
Well, agreement that they're going to look at whether the individual countries have been able to meet all the criteria for introducing the single currency. What we understand is that still some of the major or the big economies in the region, Ghana, Nigeria, are still having challenges. So it looks like there might be another postponement. There's another argument also being made whether we can allow some countries that have met all the criteria to start just like the euro and then we also join. So it looks like the 2015 deadline would not be achieved, Pakwisi.
Meanwhile, my colleague Seth Kwame Boateng, who is in Yamoussoukro, has been speaking to Foreign Affairs Minister Hannah Tete on Ghana's position on the agreement.
It's not a question of what is Ghana's stance, because this is an ECOWAS decision. Either we all agree or we don't agree. So we can't have a single, as it were, a single country position. That's the whole thing about having a regional agreement. We must have regional consensus. The EPA is an important issue. And basically we are at a point where, according to the timelines within which this negotiation is supposed to take place, ECOWAS has finished at the level of the technical staff, the chief negotiators, and it is for the heads of state to take a decision or not. And so we are at a point where it's a serious issue, but it is an issue that is directly on the tables of their excellencies to take a decision on. And once a decision is taken, it will be implemented. What we should remember is that we have an interim economic partnership agreement. If we don't have an ECOWAS partnership agreement, we are actually going to put our exports to the European Union in jeopardy. The ECOWAS
You had Foreign Affairs Minister Hannah Tete speaking there to my colleague Seth Kwame Boateng on Ghana's position on the Economic Partnership Agreement. So, George, judging from the Foreign Affairs Minister's comments on the EPA, it's most probable we might sign that agreement.
Pakwisi, you are right. She's making a strong case why we stand to lose if we don't sign this agreement. So, come Saturday, the agreement to be reached that Ghana has decided to sign the Economic Partnership Agreement.
Thanks very much, George. Moving on to other stories. We need to develop an economy that is resilient to external shocks. That's coming from renowned economist Kwame Pianim on the state of Ghana's economy. Mr. Pianim's views comes just 2 days after former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia blamed the city's freefall on weak economic fundamentals. Mr. Pianim also believes that the government and the Bank of Ghana cannot be excused from the current challenges facing the economy. I caught up with him and first asked his opinions on the performance of the city.
It's a matter of supply and demand and then confidence. The Bank of Ghana, Ministry of Finance, have to inspire confidence in the Ghanaian public and in the foreign investors that we have a policy framework that is credible, is reliable, is sustainable, and is predictable. If we have that, we are fine. But if people do not believe that your framework is predictable, that is not sustainable, then we have a problem because we are operating a global economy. The inflows from the capital surplus country is limited. They are always looking for places to shift the money to. And now that quantitative easing has stopped in America, it means that people who had access to cheap capital no longer have it. And therefore, Africa being a frontier environment is being squeezed out. And that's one of the pressures we are facing, so that the external environment is not as good as it used to be. So you need to develop an economy that is resilient against external shocks.
I guess this generally will tie to Dr. Baumia's analysis of the situation, where he says that the problem is due to the weakened economic fundamentals. Do you share his view?
The fundamentals are weakened. You see, but I'm saying that part of the weakening of the fundamentals is the external environment is not as agreeable or conducive as it was before. But also our fiscal, that's the government revenues, government expenditures have also weakened. The controls and the discipline, minimizing unfunded budget items, minimizing arrears that are not authorized, making sure that the District Assembly's funds are sent to them automatically and regularly.
But Mr. Penny, the others who also blame the situation of the dollarization of the economy. I don't know if you share that view.
What is dollarization of the economy? The city is a store of value. Okay? It's also an indicator of value. If it's not reliable, why will I use it?
It's about confidence in the local currency, really.
I'm telling you. I say it's the government, Bank of Ghana, Minister of Finance, that should create a confidence in the Ghana currency so that we use it. I mean, what sense does it make for me if I have 1,000 Ghana cedis to go and buy dollars and put it under my bed for a year? If I know that the cedi and the dollar, the cedi is going to depreciate by, say, 5% a year, I can put this money in T-bills and get 25%. Am I a fool to buy dollars to put it under my bed? But if the cedi is being mismanaged, so it's going to depreciate by 25-30%, I'm better off to buy the dollar.
You heard economist Kwame Pianim. Well, the number of registered private security agencies continues to soar. This is a direct result of a rise in demand for private security services, coupled with a dwindling capacity of the state to meet the security needs of the country. Well, today on our special Friday feature, we examine the wages and working conditions of security workers in the capital.
Security is the bedrock for the socio-economic development of any society. Historically, the state has been the ultimate provider of security for citizens. But in recent times, a lot more of private security firms have come in to complement, especially within the corporate environment. So it has become important that these men and women who are put in this position are treated with utmost care. I have been engaging one of these security officers who first tells me guarding a bank is risky.
We risk our lives every day. I mean, sitting in front of a bank and then there are attacks on the bank. Your life is at risk, but comparing the risk to what we earn at the end of the month is nothing to write home about.
He deplores what he refers to as a calculated attempt by their bosses to cheat them.
I don't even want to talk about my salary because it's very sad. If you should hear my salary right now, you'll be very, very disappointed in me. You might even advise me to stop.
You think so? Why?
Seriously, you will even hold my hand and pull me out of here and take off my clothes and say, no, my man.
Okay, so I want you to tell me about it.
At the end of the month, some of us take home as much as 200 Ghana cedis.
200 Ghana cedis. That's what you receive.
Yeah, me in person, I receive 200 cedis. And ask yourself, more than Ghana, even living in Accra here, 200 cedis, what is it going to do for you? Nothing. Yeah.
We'll bring you the full report of my colleague Samuel Obin-Apes reports, subsequent bulletin at 1 p.m. Before we go, government has appointed Ernest Mauli Agbesi as a managing director of the National Investment Bank. Joy Business has learned that his appointment took effect from March 3rd, 2014. Mr. Agbesi takes over from Dr. P.A. Kranchi, who resigned from the bank last year. Mr. Agbesi is a banker by profession and has over 25 years of experience in banking. Until his appointment as managing director, Mr. Agbesi also worked with Unibank Ghana as a head of business development and retail sales, a head of banking operations and business processing. Ernest holds an MBA in strategic management from the Paris Graduate School of Management in France. That's all for the Business Report at 8. My name is Parkwisi Asari.
The business news is sponsored by Lipton Tea. You can join Lipton on the journey of refreshment and vitality. The world's favorite hot tea brand will give you the needed level of alertness to start your day. Lipton Tea, #1 tea brand in the world. Guarantee Trust Bank, the most customer-focused bank, has opened a branch in Cape Coast to offer unrivaled convenience, fast and reliable banking services in the central region. This new branch in Cape Coast is located at F87/3 Kotokraba Road, near the Kotokraba Market. They offer universal banking services, in-branch banking, efficient internet banking platforms, and fast and reliable money transfer services. GT Bank, wouldn't you rather bank with us? The Joy Business Report is also brought to you in association with Carl Bank. Carl Bank has a domestic money transfer service which enables you to send or receive money locally using Carl Bank branches. There's also an MTN mobile money service you can sign up to. Otherwise, they run Western Union, Vigo, and MoneyGram money transfer services for you to receive money from abroad. Carl Bank, you can bank on our service.
Hello, Chief. I take Kambon, so if you send the money, then I'll go fit take them for here.
You don't know how I'm sending the money. What if I use Western Union?
Easy. I'll go take them for here.
What about if I use MoneyGram or Vigo?
Yeah, no, I'll go take them.
So what about MTN mobile money?
Oh, boss, whatever you use, even Carl Bank domestic money transfer. If you Carl Bank, no, I'll go take them. Yes.
Okay, then I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, Chief.
Whether you're receiving money from abroad or from Ghana, Carl Bank is the bank for you. Receive money from abroad through MoneyGram, Vigo, and Western Union. And for all your local money transfers, you can rely on Carl Domestic Money Transfer and MTN Mobile Money. Make only one stop for all your money transfers at any Carl Bank branch today. Carl Bank. Bank on our service.
To have life is a wonderful gift. To earn a living is fulfilling. To be with family and friends is a time to treasure. But to plan today is the best way to secure tomorrow. My advantage is that Enterprise Life gives me the most reliable solutions to help plan for tomorrow today. What's yours?
Give yourself, your family, and employees an advantage in life. Visit any of our offices or bank assurance partners nationwide and sign onto a life policy.
Enterprise, your advantage.
Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling. Yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling. Yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling. Yeah.
Don't just get up. Wake up every morning with the great taste of Lipton tea. Lipton, #1 tea brand in the world. Source, Euromonitor International.
1,000 dreams, but I cannot even sleep. All because I'm young and wild. A million reasons to step into the future. If I create, one day I will smile.
I know say money no day. Money no get map, but money get saved. Money for the show at the end of the day. Photocopy shatter and the shuttle on the way. I for buy books, you check my looks. Fish for the A's with my hooks. I for do all this to save money with GT Create student accounts. Yes, sir, my lose. Get creative. Get GT Create student account today and find out what a savings account can do for you.
A million dreams, I step into the future. GT Create, now I can smile. I'm whistling from the bank. I'm whistling from the bank.
Guarantee Trust Bank. Wouldn't you rather bank with us?
At Afrodan, we believe that many of the problems people have with their health is as a result of the way they sit. In other words, your chair can kill you. Here's Dr. Marcus Mann of the Chiropractic and Wellness Center.
What you have to remember is that the spine is the lifeline to your body, and posture is the window to that spine. Now, posture is affected by your daily activities and habits like sitting. That's why at the Chiropractic and Wellness Centers, we recommend what I believe to be the best chairs available for preventing not only subluxations, but also other health problems that you may not be aware of. And that's Rabami and Mobilex chairs. Unfortunately, on a daily basis, I have to correct the effects of this poor sitting habit in our businessmen and businesswomen. Always remember, optimal spine equals optimum health.
So, for the sake of your health, buy Rabami or Mobilex chairs from Afrodan. We're on the first floor of the Swansea Shopping Arcade. Telephone 663-085.
I've tried and tested different kinds of rice. So when it comes to satisfying my customers, it has to be the Rice Master's choice. I use only Texas Star when it comes to my famous jollof, the most favorite dish. Big Joe makes the most mouth-watering Omutio special for Sunday afternoons. Couples go over the moon for my fried rice made with Chicago stars. When it comes to wache, I never disappoint because it's made with Delta rice. And even when I make my daily plain rice and stew with Ruby, they always come back for more.
When it comes to true quality rice, only one man's opinion counts. Rice Master. Tastes to share, moments to remember.
Welcome back at 17 minutes past 8. This is Joy 99.7 FM, and we're having a conversation in our Patriotism Month on the Super Morning Show. Today, what we're dealing with is patriotism or culture in a challenged economy. And we're doing that discussion with Dr. Richard Amakoba. He heads the Department of Political Science at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Dr. Obadele Kambon is a research fellow at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. And we also have with us our very own regular Nana joining us with some perspectives on this particular matter. What we've done so far is to examine whether there's a relationship between culture and the economy. That has been established. So now we are moving into an area which has come up ever since we started this discussion on patriotism. Many people say that they have a difficulty being patriotic because they are faced with certain hardships. But let's read your text messages. Sarkodia says, I think today's topic is very important for our nation. Ghanaians must enjoy their locally produced Ghanaian foods rather than these foreign foods like pizzas and the rest. Samuel says, we should think of domestication, promote our own goods and services. Again, we should do away with outmoded cultural practices like trocosi, witch camps, FGM, etc. Some of these practices inhibit sociocultural development. Those involved should be sensitized on the need for its abolishment. Priscilla says, let unity, honesty, dedication, and good governance prevail. Gideon Kofi Entry sends out a text message which sets the tone for the next part of our conversation. Gideon writes, very interesting discussion. For me, it's hard to be patriotic in this era of economic hardship where I feel I've contributed my quota by working hard, by being law-abiding, and by paying my taxes, only for the leaders who have been put at the helm of affairs to mismanage it. It's a pity. The love I have for Ghana has waned. I want us to examine, there's a relationship between culture and the economy. That's fine. How does that relationship look like when people are faced with economic challenges?
I think I'd like to say a bit before I get to that one, if you don't mind. Because I think sometimes we delude ourselves. There's no one on this planet who has no culture. Everybody has a culture. If you're a human being, you have a culture. Well, before I even get to that, I'd like to address some of the things my brother said.
Okay, let's do so quickly.
For example, he says that you think you are thinking, but you are being manipulated. That means you're not thinking. Because if you are thinking, you will see you are being manipulated. And so that is not an answer at all. And then he used the example of Pavlov's dog. We are not dogs. You fool a human being 1, 2, and you figure out, now I'm not going to listen to you again. And so that example does not suffice at all. Right? The other thing is this. There's only one game in town. One game in town. And unfortunately, it is the Europeans and the American white people who are playing the game. They wrote the rules of the game. They know how it's played. The players are Europeans and American white people too. And so we have no choice. We are no match for them. We need to learn the game well. and play it well and beat them. That is where the problem is. Not complaining all the time forever. How long are we going to complain? And nothing happens. And so please, instead of going back with all of these, I'm looking at my brother now. How you are dressed. If you have to farm, you can't farm. You can't. How are you going to weed with this cloth? Look at everyone. Nobody is forcing us. It's because it's convenient.
No, let's not personalize. Let's not personalize the issues.
I'm not talking about
it's a
that.
broader discussion we're having, so let's deal with it at that level.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about
but
is
if
this.
you wear this to go and farm, that would be too refined for farming, wouldn't it?
Well, of course.
Exactly.
If I get stains in it, well, that means that's it. I can't wear it out again.
Yeah,
I'm not talking
but let's focus on the issue and leave some of these side matters, to be dealt with.
My problem is this: we romanticize. We romanticize ourselves as if we got something so good that nobody else has. What I'm saying once and for all, everybody has a culture in the world. Everyone. But culture must help you, should not hold you back. 8 hours is holding us back. And we keep going back there and saying we have a rich culture. The thing is, we don't think well.
No, I want us to relate it to the theme for our conversation. What we're talking about is culture and its role in the economy. We've established that already, that indeed there are elements of our culture that promote the local economy. But we're moving ahead to look at when an economy is faced with pressures and challenges like our own, how does that element of culture survive within it? How does patriotism reflect within an economy such as ours when people are complaining on a daily basis, just like the text message we got that he feels he's paid his dues and the leaders are not running the system well, for which reason his love for Ghana is lost. I want us to interrogate this particular point. Do people have a basis when they complain that because I'm experiencing hardships, I cannot love Ghana?
I think that's a very good question. Again, as the discussion has gone to this point, what I want people to do, instead of looking at the government as like some abstract entity that's apart from ourselves, is made up of the individuals. So what we are doing on our own level is similar to what we happen to see the government doing as well. So if we ourselves are not making these types of decisions that support ourselves, we really can't expect that of the government to do those things. But I want to focus in on a few points that will come directly into economy and culture. The first is the idea that anything that comes from us as African people is not good. And this is something that, again, is an idea that a lot of people harbor consciously and subconsciously. I've had people tell me that directly, but others may have that idea subconsciously. And we have a view of modernity. I was born and raised in the U.S. I'm not sure if you can tell by how I'm speaking. But we have a view of what modernity is that is not necessarily consistent with what it actually is. So right now, what's cutting edge is sustainable architecture. So they're talking about, doing these things that are sustainable, green building, all of these types of things. And where are they coming to learn it? They're coming to Africa, going to the villages, seeing how the mud, quote-unquote, huts are being built. And then there are huge multi-million-dollar companies, specifically Arizona, in New Mexico, that take this technology that they come here to learn, and now they've made it, look what we've discovered, like Christopher Columbus supposedly discovered America. You discovered something that we've been doing for thousands of years. So we have certain things that we can use if we don't have this prejudicial idea that anything that is ours is bad by virtue of that fact. Another thing is that, we have different fermented foods. We have the dokono, we have even dokono. Yeah, so this is the kinky for those who
okay. Doc pronounces it in a really interesting way. I'm sure that's why Nana was asking.
Right.
Okay.
So we have these things that are fermented, and in the West, when we talk about health, we have probiotics. We basically is saying that we should have these things that are fermented, and it introduces these good things into our body and helps our immune system to be boosted. Now, I want to come to another quote, and this is by a historian named Runoko Rashidi, and the quote is, what you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. What you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself, and what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. So, if you are told that you come from the jungle, if you're told you come from a bunch of savages, barbarians, people who have no civilization, no history, you'll act that out. But if you know that you come from the continent that gave birth to humanity and civilization, and that slavery did exist, but that we fought it and we resisted it, I think that changes everything. You'll have found a sense of pride and you'll want to identify with Africa. When someone attacks Africa, you will fight because you know that they are attacking your mother, they are attacking your heritage, and you won't have that. But if we don't see that connection, then we're doomed to wander in the wilderness, and that can't be our fate.
Right. Let's relate it to the...
So, very good. So as we're talking about what we will do for ourselves in this economy, in this challenged economy, that it comes down to what do we think of ourselves. If we think that what we do and what we create is automatically bad, whether it's rice, whether it's whatever, whether it's architecture is bad, then how are we going to do something for ourselves that may benefit ourselves in this modern world? We may become caricatures of what we think modernity is because we have a view this is what they're doing out there, when in reality they're doing the things that we oftentimes are throwing away. And in terms of the contradictions, we mentioned some of the contradictions that exist between economic development policies and choices that we've made over the years. That we have an idea of what we may call, there's a proverb, which is to say, when we're all working on the mountainside, one person doesn't look at another person's posterior.
Yeah.
So basically it's saying that we are all doing these things that may be contradictory, but because I'm also doing them, I won't point out yours and you also don't point out mine. So what it requires is, as opposed to, oh, let me point out what he's wearing and say that this is something that may not be beneficial for the economy, it may help me to look at myself and look internally and say, what am I doing on a personal level that may not be helping the economy? What are my choices day to day? Do I say I will purchase Goyo over, say, another, Shell or whatever? That these are the choices that we make in our day-to-day lives, and they have a direct impact on what the government is able to do. If we say something like, when I was 18 years old, I said every single day of my life I would wear clothing that is made by African people. That was a personal choice. And since I'm 34 now, and I've held on to that every single day up to this point in time. So sometimes I do farm, but I don't wear cloth to farm.
That's right.
But I make sure that it is made by African people. So these are some of the choices that we make in our own individual lives that will have an impact. Let's say, hypothetically, if every Ghanaian made that same choice, it would revolutionize. China would be coming to us begging us for loans. You understand? Just from that one single choice that we may say is superficial, what are you wearing? But it has, again, an impact on political economy. Now let's come down to the idea of the government. There's a proverb, which is to say that what we are doing, the choices that we are making, it's internal, and that will determine whether or not Ghana is doing well or not. So when we're saying the government, again, is not some abstract thing that's living off in the clouds. It's made up of the individuals who are making these choices on a day-to-day level. So let's say if in your everyday life, everything that you do is supporting foreign economies and not Ghana economies, why do we think that magically when you become elected that you will make decisions that are different? So I remember a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, they were talking about the president made a trip to Dubai. Well, in your own individual life, would you say, I will never set foot in Dubai? I will never, ever go to the UK. I will never go to the US. Would you make those choices? Because when you become elected, you're not going to make choices that are very much different. But then we come down to the point of contradictions. So we saw also at the State of the Nation address where the president is lifting up shoes and saying, this is something that we made here, or let's make the sacks of for cocoa. That these are things that aren't necessarily new ideas. We had the Feed Yourself, we had our Kasonoma, radios, we had all of these things that we were doing ourselves, and these are things that I think we should take up again.
Very well. Nana, Doc has given us a very clear indication of the kinds of choices that we can make to turn things around. I just want you to add on to that.
Well, I think that we should be paying attention to our development options in this country. First of all, I'd like to ask every Ghanaian, if possible, to owe allegiance to the Black Star. All right, I think that's
the one we already do.
Only when there's sports, when there's football, when there's soccer. But let's move away from soccer and start looking at the Black Star, the red, gold, and green. I think that we are a country now where we owe allegiance to different colors rather than our red, gold, and green. And I think that's one of our fundamental issues. Okay, we have shifted. We have shifted from a national agenda to short-term piecemeal planning for elections. And what it means is that for all of us who do not have those colors, we can't even breathe in Ghana anymore. All right, you guys, the press, everybody, when you turn on a radio, it's about a color. It's not Ghana, and therefore for people like us who do not have any allegiance to colors, we don't listen to radio anymore because we're tired. But going back to development, maybe this whole month when we have this discussion and people call in, I am unemployed. I don't have income. My electricity is not on. How can I be patriotic? And I think that's where we should be taking a step back and looking at what can we do to make young people feel like they belong where they are wanted. All right? I would like to submit that until we look at things like unemployment, low incomes, money in my pocket, okay, we have to look at things like access to quality service. I'll give you an example. I was somewhere near Boko, and there's a young man I had worked with earlier on an irrigation site. And I met him about 2 years ago. He was driving a motorbike. And I said, oh, you're doing well. Oh, madam, you don't know. This dry season garden has helped me so much that I've moved my child from capitation grant to international school.
I see.
Now, that said volumes. This young man decided, international school around that area is quite something else, eh? But he had made a difference in his life. He had earned his own income. He had accessed the kind of service he thought would make a difference in the lives of his children. I think we should be looking at long-term development solutions that will bring joy to not your joy, real joy to our people, security to our people. We should be looking at Kwame Nkrumah's time, or maybe I shouldn't use Kwame Nkrumah, in the 60s. We had plant development based on natural resources. That's how come you had Bonsa Tai doing Firestone in Western region, because we had rubber. That's how come we had Sopon ceramics based in Sopon, all right? We are not doing that anymore. Like he referred to, Akasanoma, all these things are gone. What we have is, I'll change education so that many people will go to school. How many students, you read a letter from or a passage from a university student these days and you wonder whether they went to school. English is bad. The grammar is terrible.
Okay, now let's wrap up.
Okay, so I would like to submit that let us probably take a step back, look at our development policy. We have a culture, yes, but let us step our development policy in our culture and in our natural resources and see how best we can use that to create real incomes for our people. Let people feel like they belong to a place which cares for them rather than a place that they are being used, which is what we've heard all this month.
Okay, Dr. Ba.
Well, there's something I have to say. I think it is unfair on your part. When I pointed to my brother, Dr. Obadele, and said how he's dressed, I wasn't talking about how he's dressed. I dress the way he's dressed when I go to funerals. I dress sometimes when I go to church. I'm talking about he's wearing a cloth. So it's not a personal attack. It's something, actually, he's the one who borrowed it. This is ours. And so why would I be attacking him if I say how he's dressed? The point is, this is ours and we don't wear it because it's not convenient. I wasn't talking about him specifically. You don't wear it. He doesn't wear it. We are not wearing it. Why? Is someone forcing us? No. Well, okay. we talked about pizza. What is in pizza? Bread, tomatoes, meat. Don't we eat all of it? It's just the way it's put together. So what is wrong with it? If somebody has some better way of doing something, why not make it your own? Are we in a fight with white people? Is that what we're talking about? I don't understand it at all. Pizza is easy. Children like it, adults like it. And all the things, the ingredients, we use them anyway. So what is the big deal about that? Let's come to the meat about what the person said. Patriotism is not just words. You can't say, I love my country because you were born there. Everybody was born somewhere. Is there any territory in the world that is not a country? So you come from a country, you were born somewhere. It must be based on something else, something substantive, something important, right? I'll give you an example. I have a case in court. Somebody bought my vehicle. He hasn't paid for it. He still has the car. I went to court, and then they issue a warrant to arrest him. He runs away. 1 year. 1 year. I still don't have my car. He has it. Do you want me to be happy about our legal system? How do I be happy about it? Justice too long delayed, it is said, is justice denied. Nobody cares. So you take care of yourself, and I take care of myself. This is how our country has become. When a young person finishes school and you don't get a job, you can't take care of your family. Why should he be patriotic? What is patriotism then? I'll tell you something. I've lived in America for a long time. They have suppressed black people for a long time. That everybody knows. But I tell you, when you say, Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It was assumed that in America, if you apply yourself, even if you're a black person, you can make something of yourself. Here, what can you do? Businesses are failing left and right. Where are the jobs? And so when we talk about patriotism, it is not just words. It has to mean something more than that. That when you are sick and you go to the hospital, you know you have a competent doctor to take care of you, right? And that you take your children to school, they will learn and make something of themselves. What in our country is working now that somebody should stand up and say, what? Viva Ghana? What is working now?
22 minutes to 9 on the Super Morning Show. That's how we draw down the curtain on the patriotism conversation for today. We're very happy to enjoy the company of Dr. Amoakoban, head of the Department of Political Science at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We also enjoyed the companionship of Dr. Obadele Kambon, who wants to make a very quick submission before we round up.
Don't go back to that.
Yes, I won't. I wanted to make a point about the Black Star. I taught a class at AUCC, also I teach at University of Ghana. Many people don't know that the Black Star came from Marcus Garvey, so the very symbol that we are talking about. What the point I would like to make is that oftentimes we don't really understand that we are Africans on an operational level, just as we don't realize that we're Ghanaians until it's time for the Black Stars to play football. On an operational day-to-day level, once we understand this, then we can start saying, again, it's not only what we find in Ghana, whether it's Chokosi or whatever. We can say our culture is African culture as a whole, wherever it may be found on the continent. Once we understand that, it's not, oh, this person is borrowing, this African is borrowing a cloth or a style of wearing cloth. If this person is African, this particular style of wearing cloth is also African, therefore it is mine. We also, when it comes to language, when we talk about operationalizing being African, I might say my language is Akan and your language is Ga, or my language is Ewe. Once we understand we're African, then if I'm Ewe, I will learn Ga as well because I'm African and that's an African language. So I want to close with a point made by Samia Nkrumah, which was that Kwame Nkrumah, he never called himself a Ghanaian. She said he called himself an African based in Ghana. And once we can get to that level of not seeing ourselves as, these ethnic groups, but a larger umbrella throughout the African world, I think we'll really be going someplace.
And that's Dr. Obadele Kambon. He is a research fellow based at the African Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. And we also were very happy to enjoy the company of Nana Oforiwa Kranting, development economist, founder, Rural Chapels Ministry. It's 19 minutes to 9 on the Super Morning Show.
All right, this is Dr. Obadele Kambon, and I'm coming with a slight addendum to the recorded show. And basically, there were a few other points that I wanted to discuss that I didn't get a chance to discuss during the show itself. And the producer and the host, Bernard, they have both said that in retrospect, they would have liked for it to be only me on the program because they felt like the other two may not have lent very much, how to put this in a good way. They may have watered down the program in some way, shape, or form, so they say in retrospect they would have liked for it to have been me alone on the show. So now, due to being able to record this addendum, we'll pretend like it was me on the show alone. One of the other concepts that I wanted to introduce was Amambremu Swantie, which is cultural AIDS. And the analogy here is that what AIDS is supposed to do is supposed to weaken the immune system to the point that it eventually gets to the point where it's so weak that any other disease can come in and basically take the person out, kill the person. And I'm drawing this analogy because when it comes to culture, that seems to be our situation, one of cultural AIDS, where we don't really have an effective evaluative criteria. We don't really have a criteria that we're evaluating this thing and saying this is something that we should adopt in a systematic way, and this is something that we should reject in a systematic way, and operating based on what's logical, operating based on tangibly seeing in various areas such as economics, psychology, health, all of these things, whether they are beneficial collectively, individually, whether they're detrimental collectively, individually. So this is one of the major issues that we have, is this cultural AIDS. Anything that comes in, because we don't have a strong enough immune system to filter things out and say that this is something that we should bring in and for X, Y, and Z reasons, and these are things that we should keep out. One of the few times that I have seen some evidence of a filtering process is in the stance against homosexuality, even in the face of losing loans and other things. So this is one of the issues that I wanted to bring up. Another additional issue that I wanted to bring up was the idea of Africans in the diaspora, and really what I consider to be the strong suit of Africans in the diaspora, which is in the realm of ideology. And we can see this going back towards Pan-Africanism and its emergence as a concept. To some degree, negritude. We can see movements like Harlem Renaissance. We can see leaders like Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X. So when it comes to ideology, that seems to be something that in the diaspora we have a pretty good grip on. And on the continent, what I see us having a stronger grip on is the actual tangible ways to be self-sustainable and be free. Now, to articulate that a little bit better, this is to say, here on the continent, a person may get sick and go out and pluck the leaves that are necessary to get better, or they may be able to build a house, using just things that are in the environment, or may be able to, do things like, here's some corn, I can grow it from scratch and then turn it into local food like banku. So all of these things are the tangible nuts and bolts that we could say are expressions of freedom, whereas in the diaspora we may have more of the rhetoric or the ideology about let's get free. But
This is basically my analysis of the strengths of the two sides. Now, to bring that back to the discussion that we've been having, I wanted to bring to light the hundreds and thousands of Africans in the diaspora who are initiated and practitioners of African spiritual systems, such as the Akan spiritual systems, those who are Akomfor, those who are Babalawo. And in the reclamation of these spiritual systems, it's not a thing of saying, oh, let's go and see what continental Africans are doing, and thereby, let's imitate whatever we happen to see continental Africans doing right now. That the entire reason for Africans in the diaspora, by and large, of getting out of Christianity, Islam, and these things is a desire for freedom. It's very difficult to say that you want to be free in areas of psychology and areas of economics and other things, and be worshiping an imaginary white man. So when we say that we want to be free, then we say, all right, well, let's get rid of these religions that were used to enslave us, whether it's Arab worship or European worship, and let's look towards our own traditions. Now, keep in mind that our original impetus for leaving those religions of our enslavers was that we wanted to be free. So now here we come to seeing continental Africans who are practicing what we are calling our traditions. But as we look at how that's actually done, and we mentioned this, we were talking about how festivals are done now as opposed to how they would have been done prior to the coming of Europeans, that when we are reclaiming these spiritual traditions, we find that, they're saying you have to, this particular obosom requires white horse whiskey, or when you go to see the elders, you have to bring the schnapps from Holland, or you have to bring the white calico cloth, or these cigars, this specific brand of cigar, and all of these things. And again, you find that these various implements are all enriching the same ones who were saying we were trying to get out from underneath their oppression. But here we find ourselves enriching them yet again. So in our critical look at what we're doing and why we're doing it, we come back to, well, what's the original reason that we are practicing the culture? Again, it's not culture for culture's sake, but it's culture in order to have some type of demonstrable benefits, tangible benefits in various areas. So as we're looking at that, we're saying, okay, we're not just doing culture for culture's sake. We're not just going to be doing what we happen to find continental Africans doing. We have to have some type of critical analysis, and we have to have evaluative criteria to filter out the things that we see are not beneficial, and then really focus in on the things that we do see are beneficial. So, those, again, who are very, I would say, forward-thinking about the reclamation of our traditions and our culture are saying, all right, well, let's throw these things out as we find them to be not beneficial, and therefore, we're basically taking steps to eradicate the cultural aids from our side as Africans in the diaspora. Another thing that I wanted to touch on or make more of a point on is about this idea of direction versus position. And I say that in terms of, for example, for myself being an African born and raised in the diaspora, I could see myself coming to Africa, getting a PhD in an African language, and then teaching at an African university as opposed to, say, something in the U.S., all these, very white institutions. So my direction is moving more towards being African. For someone who may be born here on the continent, they may see that same thing of, I'm teaching at the university here, as being the most European thing that they could possibly do. And, they'll wear their suit and tie every day. They want their tea, they want their pizza and all of these things, and they have no intent on, supporting anything African in any way, shape, or form if they can help it. And this brings up the ideas of noted Ghanaian writer Aikwe Arma. And in his book, 2000 Seasons, in the prologue, he gives this extended analogy about those who are thronging towards this white, pale city of destruction because they don't really know what it is. You know, they see the glitter, they see the glitz, and they say, this is what I want to be a part of. But then you have those who have already tasted this pale white destruction, and they are looking for a way back to our way. And what this causes is some type of, at the very least, passing by each other, those who are rushing headlong towards white destruction versus those who already are familiar with it and are looking for a way back to our way. So again, I'm bringing that up to highlight this idea of direction and trajectory as opposed to position. So again, here on the continent, you have a lot of people, and this is even waning due to globalization and other factors, but you have people who know the nuts and bolts of how to be self-sufficient on various levels, whether it comes to shelter, whether it comes to health care, whether it comes to how to sew or whatever, or grow your own food. And that's the position that they're in. But the trajectory by and large is, let's try to be as European as we can and eradicate anything, all of those types of skills that we may have been able to use to be self-sufficient. Whereas in the diaspora, generally speaking, we have not retained a lot of those skills. So we have the ideology, but now we're coming in the direction of trying to find a way back to our way. So that's another thing I wanted to point out. In terms of supporting our own, again, it's not everything that we create ourselves. You know, African people are really not at the forefront of creating rocket ships, nuclear bombs, and things of that nature. So it's not everything that we do make. However, the things that we do make, there's an impetus on us to support those things. And when we don't, you know, again, we have to look at ourselves. We'll turn around and say, how can we be patriotic when we have potholes in our roads, the lights are off, and these things? But what I really, the crux of everything that I've said in the interview is that I would really like us to focus on taking more responsibility. And in taking more responsibility, we can look at an example of, say, potholes in Africa. A person will drive over this pothole, and when that person does, I want them to look at their smartphone, which is coming from Korea, and think that there's a direct correlation between this pothole and the smartphone. Now, what's the correlation? That the money that they could have been investing back into Ghana through something like an RLG, which is a Ghanaian-owned phone company, that exact money is patching a pothole right now in Korea. So, again, this is, you know, a very direct analogy, but just to make it more tangible and visible, that the money that is not staying here in Ghana is going somewhere, and when it goes to these places, it's building the infrastructure, it's building the schools, it's building the healthcare facility, the, you know, millions, if not billions, that are flowing out of the continent in order to fulfill these created tastes and desires. That money is going somewhere, and it's being used for these particular things. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was this idea of, it's actually a concept pioneered by Amos Wilson, who I quoted at the outset, and it's an idea of spirit possession, and he's making an analogy between what goes on in a neo-colonial African mind when you have all these created tastes and desires that are implanted into us through advertising, through things like, right now they have this advertising campaign from Coke that says, share a Coke with AC, share a Coke with Kwesi, share a Coke with Kwadwo, with Adjoa, and it has the names printed on the Coke bottle. And recently there was a girl who was passing by, and she was like, oh, and she picked it up and said, oh, how did I know that it would be AC? Oh, that's me, that's me. that, we say that we are not subjected to the same types of things as, for example, the Skinner boxes, the Pavlov dogs, all of these things that were used in these psychology experiments. However, we don't understand the degree to which we're manipulated in very much the same way this advertising campaign has made this young lady want to drink Coke, which is very poisonous. All these studies have been done about how you leave a nail in Coke and it'll disintegrate the nail. You can use it to get, dried blood off of the roadside, to clear battery acid, off of battery terminals and things like this. So, these advertising things that go into our minds and we really don't understand them. So once we do have these created tastes and desires, this entity that has been embedded into us, this consciousness which is not in our own benefit, is like a type of spirit possession, again, to draw this analogy, that here you have, it's like schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder, or as Du Bois called it, double consciousness. That this entity that wants its pizza, that wants its oats, that wants its white man's suit and tie and anything else, all these created tastes and desires, that it wants things that sustain itself, even if those things are to the detriment of its host. And it's kind of like a parasitic type of relationship. So this implanted consciousness that is implanted through manipulation that we really don't fully understand is something that is inside of us, but it doesn't really serve us. And we can see how once things can get uncomfortable or these things are mentioned, these contradictions are brought up, this entity attempts to defend itself, even again at the expense of the host, body, as the consciousness is basically satisfying its own taste, its own desires, whether or not it's for the good of the individual or for the society as a whole. Again, Amos Wilson is someone who's very good to read on this. He has a book, Blueprint for Black Power, where he goes into all of these various concepts from a psychological perspective to help us understand it a bit more. Another thing that I wanted to bring up again was how a lot of people, and it's tying into this last point, that we don't fully understand why we want what we want. We just think that we want what we want and that's what we want and that's it. However, these ideas of what do we want and what do we not want is something that we really need to give a lot of thought to, about what things were put into our environment in order to create those desires, what advertising campaigns, what product placement, what social pressures were put around us to tell us these are things that are good, these are things that are desirable, without really thinking, is it logical for me to pursue these things? Is it in my economic best interest? Is it in my health interest? Is it in my social interest? Is it in all of these things? So these are things that we have to be cognizant of, and again, this goes towards our evaluative criteria, and it also goes towards our organizing principles. Once we evaluate these things, we should be able to organize them as this is something that's beneficial in this specific area of culture. This is something that's beneficial in this specific area of education. This is something that's beneficial, and you can basically chart it out. And myself and my father, we have this concept of the black tricks, and basically it's charting all of these various areas, and any action or any thought that comes up, you should be able to say, this is beneficial towards me on an individual level, this is beneficial towards African people on a collective level in these specific areas, which may overlap as well. And these are things that once we're conscious of them, once we're conscious of the manipulation, then we can start to do things in order to counter it, and also in order to inspire others. And I wanted to bring up an anecdote to come back to the point of what we desire, what we think is good. That there's a guy who works at University of Ghana. working with some of the IT things for the Faculty of Arts, and he was confiding in me how he's not able to let his hair grow or wear African clothes except on Friday. And he said that if he went up to on the hill where the administration is, wearing the types of things like how I was wearing, how he would be strongly censored. And, they would tell him, go back home and come back after you are coming, with your suit and tie on and your, cut and all of these types of things. So again, it's not necessarily based on what's logical. It's not necessarily based on what is beneficial, as we can see in various tangible ways. It's based upon a collective type of being mesmerized into thinking that what is ours is automatically bad. We're not really evaluating it. So we can see on these levels that there's punishment for those who may be doing something that at the end of the day is logical in various areas. And on a personal level, actually one of my advisors spoke to me and said, like wearing this traditional cloth, like he said, you can wear batakari. He said, I know you'll never wear suit and tie. And I said, yes, you're correct. But he was like, you could wear batakari because, other Ghanaians won't be scared by that. But if you wear the cloth, that, again, this is going back to this analogy of spirit possession or schizophrenia or double consciousness, that they will be scared of that and they will lash out, at you in various ways for doing this, not because what I'm doing is going to kill someone or hurt someone or whatever, but because it highlights just from them looking at me their own contradictions on various levels of, these are things that should be mine, but because I've been taught that everything that's mine is bad, I'm now going to lash out at somebody who is not, or who's reminding me, I should say, of these types of contradictions. So, for me, I wore a cloth to my PhD defense. I wore a cloth to my job interview. I wore a cloth to my presentations at Linguistics Association of Ghana, to seminars, and this is what I wear along with my beads showing my rank in the traditional spiritual system, which a lot of people who are ethnically Akan or whatever don't even recognize or know what it means. But again, it's not a thing of let me come to the continent and imitate whatever I happen to find continental Africans doing, because again, I may end up adopting things that are maladaptive. And there's a proverb, which is to say, I've escaped from the fire ants and then gone and fallen into the fire. That we're not leaving a very oppressive situation where we've been basically conditioned to do things that are not in our best interest in order to come to the continent and then just adopt other maladaptive behaviors that aren't in our best interest. It behooves us to take a critical eye and say, is this something that is logical, beneficial in these things? But with the advice that my advisor gave me, he was saying that, people may actually prevent your progress, promotions and things like this in the university environment because of feeling threatened. And again, it's not the fact that they're African that's being threatened. It's this, again, implanted double consciousness that is being threatened and says, I only desire these things that are white, and anything that's African, I'm going to kick against it almost as a reflex or a knee-jerk reaction without necessarily going down the path of logic. So, again, what I want us to take from this is that we have to basically look at it like we should bring up these contradictions, not to point them out in other people, but more so to look at ourselves and change what we do. When we change what we do, then we change the world around us. We cannot be oppressed by someone who plans on taking all of our money in the form of cash for skin bleaching and hair weaves and all of these things if we don't desire those things. That, again, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and say our infrastructure could be better if we were doing these things in our own individual lives. Then once we get government positions, if we're already making beneficial decisions on a personal level, those will only be translated once we have more power. In the sphere of influence, if you're doing wise things, once your sphere of influence grows larger, you will continue doing those wise things, and it will have an impact on other people's lives as well. And we really have to get away from dumbing things down for Ghanaians. And I hear Ghanaians saying this like, oh, if I say this, people won't understand, or blah, 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 blah. That some people may not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, let me never say anything that's logical or that makes sense, because I'm afraid that no one will understand what I'm saying. So, once we are introducing these concepts, you'll find that some people are indeed inspired by it. There was a young lady who I spoke to her that I would never be interested in a woman who permed her hair or had her hair like a horse or a dog or a white woman or anything like this. And from that time on, she kept her hair natural, and I hadn't seen her for like 2 years or more. And I saw her, and her hair was still natural, and I was like, wow, that's wonderful. And she said not only that, all of her cousins are now keeping their hair natural, and her friends as well. And they were asking her, oh, what do you put in it, and these things. So I could have approached it like, oh, Ghanaians will never understand this concept of let's not put poisonous chemicals that cause cancer into our brains. Let me not say anything. Or I could share the information that I have about it, and we can see the results that now she's better health-wise, she's better psychologically, saying that I'm not trying to be a cheap imitation of an animal with animal fur or whatever on my head. That, these are things that we can do just on an individual level to inspire and really make changes in our own lives. And once we are making changes in our own lives, we can counter the external manipulation with our own inspiration by how we're living and what we exude and what we do on a day-to-day basis. So those were the points that I wanted to bring to the fore. And I was told by, again, the producer and the host that they want me to be back on and possibly suggest some books to read. They're going to have a book review. So I suggested a few, like Blueprint for Black Power, like 2000 Seasons, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, Exploding the Myths by Anthony Browder. And, again, I think that once we get this information out, it's like putting a glass of clean water next to a glass of dirty water, that you don't have to, there's a proverb in Wolof, Sabu du food bopam, that soap doesn't wash itself. And then in Tree we say, and Chine and Kamfu Nihose Mede, that salt doesn't praise itself to say that I'm delicious. But when people hear things that are true, that are logical, that resonate with them, they will start to gravitate towards those and move away from the dirty water, which is obviously contaminated. So, I just wanted to bring this to a close with a few of those ideas. And hopefully in the future I'll be able to come back and introduce more. And again, these ideas are not just my own ideas. A lot of other scholars, Amos Wilson, Kwame Ture, my own father, Dr. Kamal Kambon, all of these ideas are the collective wisdom of Africans throughout. And the final point that I'll make is this idea of collective wisdom as Africans, that once we know that we're Africans, and I made this point actually on the show, that, we could look at it like, oh, Ghanaians borrowed the Black Star from Marcus Garvey when he was in the U.S., and Marcus Garvey borrowed his things from Booker T. Washington's idea of self-sufficiency and practical education. So all these people borrow. This is really ridiculous. I can't borrow my own cloth and put it on. I can't borrow my own money from myself. This is something that's already mine. So Ghanaians are not borrowing the Black Star. they're Africans and this is something that's African, so they are using what is already rightfully theirs. Africans from the diaspora cannot be borrowing something